My family chose money. A stranger saved me. Now who should I choose? My own family chose money over me. They threw me out of the house without looking back. To them, I wasn't a son anymore. I was just someone standing between them and the money they wanted. I lost my home. I lost my family. I lost everything. Then, when I had absolutely no one left, a complete stranger walked into my life. She gave me food. She gave me hope. And, for the first time in a long time, someone looked at me like I actually mattered. Now, the same greedy family that abandoned me wants me back. The stranger who saved my life wants me to stop living in the past. And every single day, I ask myself the same question. Who should I choose? Before you answer, you need to know how everything fell apart. Because none of this happened overnight. It all started 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Life wasn't perfect. But I believed I had a family that loved me. My name is Ethan. I'm 28 years old. I grew up believing that family always comes first. My parents repeated those words my entire childhood. No matter what happens, we'll always stand together. For years, I believed them. I worked long hours at a local construction company. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was enough to help with the bills. Dad had retired after a back injury. Mom stayed home. My younger brother Ryan never kept a job for more than a few weeks. If he wasn't sleeping, he was gambling or asking someone else for money. Every month, half of my paycheck disappeared before I even had a chance to spend it. Dad called it helping the family. Mom called it doing your duty. Ryan called it being a good brother. I never complained. Not once. Because I believed sacrifices were part of being a family. I skipped vacations. I drove an old truck that broke down almost every month. I stopped buying things I wanted. Every extra dollar went home. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. Nothing I ever did was enough. If I worked overtime, they asked why I wasn't working weekends too. If I got a bonus, they already had plans for it before I even saw the money. Every conversation became about bills, debt, or someone needing another favor. I told myself things would get better. Families go through hard times. That's what I believed. Until one evening, Dad called everyone into the living room. His voice sounded unusually serious. Ryan was smiling. Mom looked excited. I should have realized right then. Something was wrong. Dad folded his hands together. "We've made an important decision," he said. One sentence. That's all it took for my life to start falling apart. At first, I thought maybe we'd finally found a way out of our financial problems. Maybe Dad had found another source of income. Maybe Ryan had finally grown up. I couldn't have been more wrong. Dad slid a stack of papers across the coffee table. He looked directly at me. Then he said the words I'll never forget. "This family has an opportunity to change our future forever." I smiled. "That's great. What's the plan?" Ryan laughed under his breath. Mom avoided looking at me. Dad pushed the papers even closer. "We just need one sacrifice." I reached for the documents, and the moment I read the first page, my heart stopped. I stared at the papers in my hands. At first, I thought I was reading them wrong. I read the first page again, then a third time. My hands started shaking. The documents weren't about paying off debt. They weren't about saving our home. They were about selling it. The house my grandfather had built decades ago. The house I had spent years helping maintain. The house I believed belonged to all of us. Was being sold to a real estate developer? The offer was worth nearly $1 million. I looked up at my parents. "Dad, this can't be right." He didn't answer. Instead, Ryan leaned back on the couch with a smug smile. "It is right." I looked back at the paperwork. Something else caught my attention. There was a section explaining how the money would be divided. Dad, Mom, Ryan, and nothing. No percentage beside my name. No share. Nothing at all. I frowned. "I don't understand." Dad finally spoke. "That's because there isn't anything to understand. The money will be split between the three of us." I blinked. "What about me?" Nobody answered. The silence said more than words ever could. I looked at Mom. She wouldn't even meet my eyes. "Mom?" She quietly looked down at the floor. Ryan laughed. "You don't seriously think you deserve a share, do you?" I stared at him. "I've paid half this family's bills for years. I've covered your debts. I've repaired this house. I've worked every holiday while you sat at home." Ryan shrugged. "So?" Dad sighed. "This isn't about the past. It's about the future. Our future." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Our future? What about mine?" Dad folded his arms. "You're old enough to take care of yourself." Those words hit harder than any punch ever could. For years, I'd sacrificed everything because I believed we were building a future together. Turns out, I was only helping build theirs, not mine. I looked back at the paperwork. Then another page caught my attention. It explained why my name wasn't included. Because once the house was sold, I would no longer be living there. I slowly looked at Dad. "What does this mean?" His expression never changed. "It means you'll have 30 days to move out." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because my brain refused to believe what I'd just heard. You're kicking me out?" Dad nodded once. "It's time." I looked at Mom. She still said nothing. Tears filled my eyes. "I've done everything for this family. I gave you almost every paycheck. I never asked for anything. I stayed when everyone else would have left. So this is my reward?" Ryan stood up. "You should be grateful. Most parents wouldn't let a grown man stay this long." I turned toward him. "You haven't had a real job in years. And you're calling me a burden?" His smile disappeared. Dad raised his voice. "Enough. The decision has already been made. There will be no arguments." I looked around the room. The walls I'd painted. The ceiling I'd repaired. The kitchen I'd remodeled with my own hands. Every corner of that house held a memory. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, family dinners. Now, it suddenly felt like none of those memories belonged to me anymore. I quietly asked one last question. "When did you decide this?" Nobody answered. Ryan smirked again. "About 4 months ago." 4 months. For 4 entire months. They had smiled at me, accepted my money, shared meals with me, pretended everything was normal, all while secretly planning to throw me away. That realization hurt more than being kicked out, because it proved something I'd been too blind to see. They hadn't chosen money at the last minute. They had chosen it, long before they ever told me. I slowly placed the papers back on the coffee table. "I understand." Dad looked relieved. "I knew you'd do the mature thing." I looked him straight in the eyes. "No, you don't understand. I just realized I never actually had a family." Without another word, I walked upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and started packing everything I owned into one old backpack. I could hear Ryan laughing downstairs. I could hear my parents discussing furniture they wanted to buy with the money. Not one person came upstairs to stop me. Not one person knocked on my door. Not one person apologized. As I zipped up my backpack, I realized something. I wasn't leaving because I wanted to. I was leaving because, to them, money had already replaced me. I took one last look around the room I'd called home for almost 30 years. Then I walked downstairs. Dad didn't even stand up. Mom whispered, "Take care of yourself." That was it. No hug, no tears, no goodbye. I opened the front door, stepped outside, and closed it behind me. I had no idea that the next person I would meet would completely change my life. I spent my first night sleeping in my truck. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Just a few days. I'd find another place, another job, another chance. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The next morning, I woke up with a stiff back and an empty stomach. I washed my face in a gas station restroom, changed into my cleanest shirt, and drove to every construction company I could find. Most of them weren't hiring. The few that were wanted experience with equipment I'd never used. By sunset, I'd heard the word no more times than I could count. For the next week, that became my routine. Wake up in my truck, apply for jobs, eat the cheapest food I could find, sleep in the same parking lot. Every day my savings got smaller. Every night I wondered how much longer I could keep going. One afternoon, my truck refused to start. I turned the key again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. The battery was dead. I leaned back in the driver's seat and closed my eyes. I didn't even have enough money to replace it. It felt like life was finding new ways to remind me that I had nothing left. As I sat there, someone knocked on my window. I looked up. A young woman stood outside holding 2 cups of coffee. She smiled politely. I rolled the window down. "Excuse me," she said. "I've seen this truck here for almost a week." For a second, I thought she was about to ask me to leave. Instead, she handed me one of the coffees. "I figured you could use this." I hesitated. "You don't even know me." She smiled again. "I know, but everyone needs someone once in a while." I accepted the coffee. It was still warm. "Thank you. I'm Emma. Ethan." She looked around at the inside of the truck. "You've been living in here, haven't you?" I wanted to lie. Instead, I nodded. She didn't look disgusted. She didn't pity me. She simply asked, "Have you eaten today?" I looked away. "Not yet." Without saying another word, she walked across the street. A few minutes later, she returned carrying 2 breakfast sandwiches. One for herself, one for me. We sat on a nearby bench eating in silence. It felt strange. A complete stranger was treating me with more kindness than my own family had shown me in years. After a while, she asked quietly, "So, what happened?" For some reason, I told her everything. About my parents. About Ryan. About the house. About the money. About being thrown out. When I finished, she stayed silent for a few seconds. Then she shook her head. I'll never understand how parents can do something like that. Neither could I. She reached into her bag and handed me a small business card. "My uncle owns a construction company. He's always looking for hardworking people. I can't promise he'll hire you, but I'll introduce you." I stared at the card. "Why are you helping me?" Emma smiled. "When I was 19, I lost everything too. I know what it feels like when everyone walks away. So if I can stop someone else from feeling that, I will." Those words hit me harder than anything my parents had ever said. For the first time since leaving home, someone believed in me. The next morning, I drove to the address on the card. I had no idea that walking through those doors would completely change my future. The construction company was smaller than I expected. There was no fancy office, no expensive furniture, just hardworking people getting ready for another day on the job. I walked inside holding Emma's business card so tightly that it was almost bent. A man in his late 50s looked up from his desk. "You must be Ethan." I nodded. "You know Emma?" He smiled. "I'm her uncle, Mike. She called me last night. She told me your story." I immediately felt embarrassed. "I don't want anyone feeling sorry for me." Mike shook his head. "I don't hire people because I feel sorry for them. I hire people because they work hard." He leaned back in his chair. "Emma says you're one of the hardest workers she's ever met. So here's the deal. You work with my crew for 1 week. If they like you, the job is yours." I didn't even let him finish. "I'll do it." That first week was exhausting. We started before sunrise, worked through the heat. Sometimes we didn't leave until after dark. But unlike my old job, people respected each other. Nobody treated me like a machine. Nobody expected me to carry everyone else's problems. By Friday afternoon, Mike called me into his office. He smiled before I even sat down. "My crew wants you to stay." I couldn't believe it. "Really?" He laughed. "They'd probably quit if I let you go." For the first time in months, I smiled without forcing it. The paycheck wasn't huge, but it was enough. Enough to rent a small studio apartment. Enough to stop sleeping in my truck. Enough to finally breathe again. A week later, Emma stopped by after work. She looked around my tiny apartment. "It's small." I laughed. "It's perfect." She smiled. "I told you things would get better." I looked around the room. 1 couch, 1 table, 1 bed. That was all. But everything inside belonged to me. Nobody could throw me out again. Over the next few months, life slowly changed. I worked overtime whenever it was available. Mike promoted me to crew leader. For the first time in years, I started saving money instead of giving it all away. Emma and I became close. Really close. We had dinner together almost every weekend. She celebrated every small victory with me. When I bought a used pickup truck, she was happier than I was. When I signed the lease for a better apartment, she brought pizza and insisted we celebrate. Somehow, without realizing it, she had become the person I trusted most. Then one evening, as we were leaving a restaurant, my phone rang. The screen showed a name I never expected to see again. "Mom, I stared at the phone. It kept ringing. Emma looked at me. "You don't have to answer." For a moment, I almost didn't. Then I remembered the day they threw me out. The silence. The cold goodbye. I answered. "Hello?" For a few seconds. Nobody spoke. Then I heard my mother's voice. "Ethan, we need to talk." After 6 months of silence, my family had finally remembered I existed. But something told me they weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because they needed something. And deep down, I already knew what it was. I looked at Emma before saying a single word. She could tell by my face exactly who was on the phone. She gently nodded. "Whatever happens, don't let them make you forget what they did." I took a deep breath. "What do you want, Mom?" Her voice sounded softer than I remembered. "We'd like to see you." I almost laughed. "You had 6 months to call." Silence. Then she quietly said, "We made mistakes." I closed my eyes. "Mistakes? You threw me out of my own home. You watched me leave with one backpack. And not one of you tried to stop me." Again. Silence. Finally, she asked, "Can you come over tomorrow?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. Not because I forgave them, because I wanted answers. The next afternoon, I parked outside the house I used to call home. Everything looked the same. The front porch, the old mailbox, the tree Dad and I planted years ago. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Then the front door opened. Mom rushed outside with tears in her eyes. "Ethan." She tried to hug me. I stepped back. Her smile disappeared. Dad stood behind her. Ryan was sitting on the couch, staring at his phone like I wasn't even there. I walked inside. No one spoke for almost a minute. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "You're looking well. I've been working." He nodded. "That's good." I looked around the living room. The expensive furniture was gone. The giant TV Ryan had wanted was gone too. Something felt different. "So," I said, "why am I really here?" Dad exchanged a nervous look with Mom. Then he sighed. "The developer backed out." I frowned. "What?" "The housing market changed. The deal fell apart." Ryan slammed his hand on the table. "They screwed us!" Dad ignored him. "We already spent part of the advance payment. And now," he looked directly at me, "we're in debt." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The same people who told me I wasn't part of the family were now asking for help. Dad leaned forward. "We know you've got a good job now. Your mother told me." I stared at him. "You've been keeping track of me?" Mom looked embarrassed. I asked around. Dad continued. "If you could help us financially, we could get through this." There it was. Not an apology. Not regret. Money. Once again, money. I slowly stood up. "So that's why you called?" Mom started crying. "It isn't like that." I looked at her. "Then tell me. When I slept in my truck, did you wonder where I was? When I lost my job, did you call? When I had nothing to eat, did either of you care?" Neither of them answered. Because they couldn't. Dad's face turned red. "We're still your family." I shook my head. "No, my family doesn't throw me away when money shows up. My family doesn't pretend I don't exist for 6 months." Ryan finally looked up from his phone. "Oh, come on. Stop acting like a victim." That was enough. I walked over and looked him straight in the eyes. "For years, I paid your bills. I covered your gambling debts. I gave up my future so you could waste yours. And you still think I'm the selfish one?" Ryan had no answer. The room fell silent. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a business card, and placed it on the table. It was Mike's company card. I didn't rebuild my life because of this family. I rebuilt it because complete strangers believed in me when you didn't. I turned toward the door. Dad called after me. "So that's it? You're abandoning your own family?" I stopped. Without turning around, I gave him one final answer. "No, I'm simply treating you the same way you treated me." Then I walked out. As I got into my truck, Emma called. "How did it go?" I looked back at the house one last time. They finally told me why they wanted me back. And they never wanted me. They only wanted what I could give them. Emma stayed quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question I'd been avoiding. "So, who are you choosing?" I looked at the house. then smiled for the first time all day. I think. I finally know the answer. I looked at Emma. Then I looked back at the house. For years, I thought family was something you were born into. Now I understood. Family is something you earn. I smiled. My choice was made the day you knocked on my truck window. Emma looked surprised. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. I choose the people who stood beside me when I had nothing. I choose the person who believed in me when everyone else walked away. I choose my future. A tear rolled down Emma's cheek. She smiled. You deserve that future. I reached for her hand. For the first time in a very long time, I felt completely at peace. Over the next few months, life kept getting better. Mike promoted me again. I started managing larger construction projects. My savings continued to grow. I even bought a small house. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't expensive. But every payment came from my own hard work. No one could ever take it away from me. Emma was there the day I got the keys. She walked through every room smiling. This place already feels like home. I looked at her. It does. Because for the first time, home wasn't a building. It was the person standing beside me. A few weeks later, there was another knock on my door. This time, it wasn't Emma. It was my parents. Dad looked older. Mom looked exhausted. Ryan wasn't with them. Neither of them spoke at first. Finally, Dad looked down and said something I never thought I'd hear. I was wrong. Those 3 words carried more weight than anything he'd ever said. Mom started crying. We thought money would solve everything. It didn't. We lost the deal. We lost the house. And she looked at me through her tears. We lost our son. For a moment, nobody moved. Months ago, I would have given anything to hear those words. Now, they didn't erase what had happened. Some wounds heal. Others leave scars forever. Dad slowly reached into his pocket. He handed me an old family photo. It was taken years earlier. Before greed. Before betrayal. Before everything fell apart. I know we don't deserve another chance, he said. But I'm asking anyway. I looked at the photo, then back at my parents. I don't hate you. Mom looked hopeful. But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. Their smiles faded. I've forgiven you. Because carrying that anger only hurts me. But trust. You broke that. And trust takes much longer to rebuild. Dad quietly nodded. I understand. For the first time, he actually did. Before leaving, Mom hugged me. This time, I didn't step away. It wasn't because everything was fixed. It was because I refused to let bitterness control my life. They walked back to their car. Neither of us knew what the future would look like. Maybe one day we'd rebuild something. Maybe we wouldn't. But that decision would happen slowly. Not because they expected it. Because they had finally learned that relationships can't be bought. 6 months later, Emma and I stood in the backyard of our new home. The sun was setting. She smiled at me. So, if you could go back, would you change anything? I thought about it. The betrayal. The nights in my truck. The hunger. The loneliness. The pain. Then I looked at the woman who had changed my life. I smiled. No, if my family hadn't chosen money, I never would have found the people who chose me. Emma squeezed my hand. I'm glad they made that mistake. So am I. Looking back now, I finally have the answer to the question that haunted me for so long. My family chose money. A stranger saved me. Now who should I choose? I chose the people who stood beside me when I had nothing. I chose kindness over greed. Respect over obligation. Love over blood. Because real family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes, it's the one that chooses you. So, what do you think? Did I make the right choice, or should I have given my family another chance? Let me know in the comments.